It's time to learn with our friend
Now I thought it would be a
Clive.
good idea before I eat my apple is to actually try
grab
to
your
paint
brush,
it. Now this
have a
is a
great
study on an
time.
apple, study on light, shade, dark,
And
tone,
don't
whatever.
forget to
I
click
thought it'd be a good idea. Now you
subscribe.
look at the apple, it's not equal on both sides, it's slightly higher that side than that side. So when we come to paint these things from our imaginations, we tend to make them equal, but they're not. Tomatoes aren't, they're all squishy sometimes, you know, they've all got different sizes. Bananas are not always bent, they're straight. Yeah, especially in the EU. Can't have a banana that's bent in the EU because Brussels don't allow it. There we are. Anyway, we'll put that down, we'll take a photograph of that, and we'll see where we go from there. Okay, so I've got a little mechanical pencil. It doesn't matter what pencil you got. You can have I would suggest you have something like a HB or a 1B or something like that. Something reasonably soft, not too hard because you don't want to pierce the actual canvas itself. What I suggest you do is find, I'm going to put this roughly in the center. I know you're not supposed to do that, but just for this argument's sake, I'll take it just below center. There we are. It'll be easier. So I'm just going to mark out roughly a line like that. Okay, so the reason you go like this with a pencil, you might be asking, why do they do that? Well, if I look at the bottom of the apple and I get the side of the pencil there to the end of my thumb, and I can work out roughly the width of that apple, and then that's that amount, and then I count 1, 2. So the width goes into the height twice. So whatever my width is going to be, so say my width is going to be that much, I know then if I 1, 2, I know that apple is roughly in proportion. So that's what they do. It's a measuring device. So you look at the width, or the width of something, and then you can divide that into the height of something, and you can use it in different ways. So if we see people going like that, yes, I'm an artist. Yes, yes, I'm not self-taught. I've been to college. Yes, yes. So yes, but we haven't been to college. A lot of us are self-taught, and a lot of us can't afford lessons, and that's why I do these lessons. Now, you know, the other thing you want to do is look at the base and decide on about the width of it. So it's about 1.5. So if I go there roughly, and roughly about there, so slightly wider on the one side, and that's all you need to do really. So you can see I got my rough dimensions in place, and so I want to bring that around like that, and it's going in, coming down, like that. It's a bit flatter this side, coming up, and then I can see where the stalk sits. Stalk is going to come out of there like that somewhere. On the bottom of the apple, it's got a little bit of a ridge to it there, like that. And then you just get the rough idea of what you want. You can take a lot of these guidelines out then. My battery's going on my eraser. It's a battery operated one. And just play with the shape until you're happy that it's near enough. It doesn't really matter if it's not. That goes behind there like that. As I said, this is just a study at the end of the day, and apples are all different, so it's not as if you're going to make a mistake. If apples are different, then it doesn't really matter what the apple looks like, as long as it looks like an apple. And it comes up around like that. You can see it a little bit flatter than that side. This is where I can see it, and it comes around like that. Okay, so let me go and set my palette out, get some brushes sorted, and I'll be back soon. As you can see, I've set my palette up. I've got the red, the alizarin crimson, orange, yellow, and I've got the burnt umber, and I've got the green, which is opposite the red, and I've got the blue, which is opposite the orange. I've done that because it's easier for you to remember that they are opposites and they are complements. I'm going to wet the palette as I normally do, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of burnt umber, and I'm looking at my subject, and I'm just going to put a very light wash there. And what I haven't done is I need to add some titanium white to my palette, and also I need to add some Mars black, because you know these are my staples. There we go. I'm going to bring a touch of white to that one side of that burnt umber. Because the shadow is falling towards the back of the apple. It's going to be a little bit dark up there. I'll just block this out. This is just a little guide. I do this quite a lot. You've seen me doing this with the glazing apples and girl with a pearl earring. I just like to get my values right. Now you can either paint over this or you can glaze over this later on. It makes no difference. I think we'll have a little go of this way first. Now the dark, the background is really dark, so let's put let's add a little bit of my Mars black to my burnt umber. I'm going to darken that down. I'm looking at my subject as I'm doing this. And it's good to actually do studies like this sometimes. It's you know, you can do apples, you can do pears, you can do oranges, lemons, any type of fruit really is. It's good to have a little bit of understanding on tones. Now I've done a tonal lesson. I encourage you to go and have a look at that. It's called Contrast, part 1, 2 and 3. I will try and put some links to that in the descriptions below. So I wanted a nice dark background like that. Now, under here is going to be dark, and then it's going to roughly like that. I'm just changing over now to my detail brush. Again, looking at my subject, it's coming around, it's quite dark around about that area there. quite dark, almost black under there. So we'll just put a little bit of black there for now. Just bring a bit of that around like that. Wash my brush. Bit lighter there, coming down to there, a little lighter there, come back into that mid-tone now, there, there's a little bit there, and just blend that in. Changing over to a smaller short flat, I'm just going to mist my canvas. I'm changing over to a little filbert. So I'm just picking up a bit more white into that mix. I'm looking at my subject. It's very light in there. I'm trying to get the shape of the apple now. And just build up. Paint what you see. Don't paint what you think you see. It's important that you actually paint what you see. It's quite dark there. And it's quite dark along that edge there. And it's dark there. Like I said, it's very important you paint what you see. And then we're lightening up again into this area. And it's a good idea really to do these, oops, just dropped my brush in the paint. It's a good idea really to do these type of paintings, these monochromatic paintings, and because you'll get to understand more of tones and tonal values. This is what you're looking for really, is tonal values on this, on the lightest areas you need to look for. Again, going back into our brush, let's get a try and develop some shape. Paint into the shape of the apple now. Paint to the shape of the apple. Get a little bit of black into that mix. Keep a nice dark, this area is dark in here. A nice dark colour. Pick up a bit more burnt umber. Taking a bit of paint off my brush, just trying to find these patterns now of lights and midtones and darks, and that's what we're trying to establish here. Mixing a little bit more black to this mix now. I'm just going to go into there, a little bit there like that. what we need to do now is dry that with a hairdryer. Going back into the burnt umber mix, I'm not happy with this area here. Just build this up until you're happy. Let's go back into my detail brush. A bit more burnt umber, and touching into that little bit of black area there. I'm just going to darken this edge there now. I'm just going to put this stalk in just to give me a little bit of a guide. I'm dragging up just trying to develop a couple of those little lines I can see actually on the apple itself. And looking at the apple, it looks a little bit darker across the back here. So I'm just refining shape now. The shadow's coming down. Wetting my brush, taking the moisture off my brush, and I'm just going to pull that through like that. It looks, going back into that dark mix again, now it looks a little bit darker around there, definitely around this edge there, a little bit there, but it's catching a little bit of light. I'm going to do with a bit of lighter mix now, and I'm definitely catching a little bit of too much paint on the brush, like there. And then down that edge. There. Lighter there. So just look at the colours and get the tone of the colours that as accurate as you possibly can, because it's darker there, so that's going to be darker there than there. So continue to do that until you are satisfied that you've got it as accurate as you possibly can. Now yours is, you've heard me say this, I say this so many times, yours will differ so much to mine, because once you've got one, you've got a different apple, and number two, you've got different lighting, so we're not going to be painting the same thing, but we are painting an apple, which is good, but you know what I mean. So you just keep building this apple up, get those tones, think about the darkest spots, darkest spots, I told you my teeth will lose. Think of the darkest spots, the lightest spots, and the spots that are in between. Now, not literally spots, but you know what I mean, parts of the painting. And you just keep building that painting up until you're satisfied that you've got an accurate representation. Now that's a monochrome painting, so you can leave it at that if you want to. It's a good way of doing a study. But what we're going to do in this particular instance now, I'm going to allow this to dry, and then we're going to take that along and we can work on a glaze. Okay, so worked on that a little bit, just basically doing what I was doing when I was showing you what to do. So I just touched it up a little bit. It was just to save video time basically, so I've just done exactly the same thing, just strengthened up the darks, strengthened up the lights a little bit, and played around with the midtones. I wanted to get that, the apple is quite dark, so in this particular instance we're going to use some glazing medium. Now you can use you can thin the paint down slightly with water, it's exactly the same thing, but this actually does it gives it a nice sheen. You can use a matte medium as well for this, but I personally like using the glazing medium. Now what we need to do with the glazing medium, decant that into a pot, and then we can mix our glazes. Now glazes, what is a glaze? It's a series of layers with pigment in. So say we're just going to go over it with red, it would be the pigment would be diluted into the glazing medium, would go over it, let it dry, go over it, and we build these layers and layers and layers up, and eventually what's going to happen is that apple is just going to go pop, and you do that with all the colours. I'll show you exactly what I mean if you just follow along with me. So let's decant some of this out into our little pots. Okay, so I've got a couple of these little wax pots, and I'm going to decant some of the glazing medium just in one of these for now. I'm using it neat, I'm not going to thin it with water in any way, and you're going to need a nice soft brush for this, a nice soft brush, and just touch a little bit of water just onto the wet palette just to get it moist, and then we're just bringing that there like that. There's a little bit of the glazing medium and just a touch of the cadmium red, and that's all we're going to do. Now that's all a glaze is. Okay, so let's have a look at the actual painting itself. So what I'm going to do is just concentrate just on the apple. I'm going to go all over that apple. As you can see, it's already started to develop a little bit of a red tinge. Now I'm going to dry that very quickly. Again, once more, I'm going to do another application now with a cadmium red, sorry. Painting in the shape of the apple. So we've done the hard work by establishing all the shadows and the midtones and the highlights and the tonal values. All you're doing now is actually glazing colour. A bit more glazing medium onto the palette, bring a little bit of touch of yellow into that. So let's brighten up the apple a little bit now. Look at the dear reference. And let's just bring a little bit of yellow, a little bit more yellow there. Taking the excess off. Just bring the yellow, not all over, just where the yellow shows on your apple. Oops. It's a bit thick, don't worry. And again, a little bit of orange. Taking the excess off. And then looking at your apple. And dry that off. Now I want that to dry 100% before I go on to the next layer, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get another pot. I'm going to pick up some matte medium because I want to glaze with this matte medium, but I don't want it to be shiny. I want the background to be dull. So I'm just what I'm going to be working on now. I'm just cleaning my brush, making sure my brush is nice and clean. I'm picking some matte medium up, putting it on the palette in exactly the same way. Just a touch of water, just a tiny tip of your brush in there, just to thin it just slightly. Bit of black, because my background is black, and I'm just going to go. Be very careful not to go onto that red that you've just put on. Bring a bit more black, a bit more matte medium. I want this side darker. The reason that I want this side darker is because this is my lightest side. So if I have the background darker, it's going to make that look brighter. It's an old tip. Play with that a bit more in a minute. And I'm bringing in a bit of burnt umber to that black now. To put into the foreground. I don't mind if there's a bit of canvas texture showing. Just cleaning my brush. I'm going back into a little bit of that yellow, a little bit more pigment this time, and then I'm just going to go pick up those little tiny spots of light. Going into a detail brush, now making sure it's nice and clean, going back into that yellow, make sure it's got a bit of glazy medium to it. And then I want to go, don't overload the brush too much, just a little bit in there, like that. I'm going to bring a touch of white to the corner of that because I just want to make it a little bit more opaque. And adding white does that. You see it sparkles it a bit as well. I'm just going to bring in a couple of little lines like that. So it's still got glazing medium. I'm actually painting with that now. Washing my brush, a bit more glazing medium, going over to where my red is, putting some glazing medium onto my palette, picking up a bit of that alizarin crimson, mixing that with that. I haven't used the complements yet. I'm quite happy with the way this is starting to look. So I'm just deepening with the alizarin crimson now, building up little tiny lines that you'll see on apples, and it's going to be darker in there, nice dark rich colour, a little bit darker there. You've still got these little flecks of red. Dark, 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 dark. Now don't be tempted to paint this here with black. You want a dark red. Now if you want to darken down the red, you can make it a shade. So let's just add a little bit of black to that. So we can make it a dark red, he says. Yes. It's not as dark as you want it, is it, Clive? No, it's not, because you've just brought some cadmium red into it, that's why. Doesn't matter, we'll darken that up now. There we go. I just wash the brush to get a bit of alizarin crimson there. Now put a bit of black to it, that's better. Because I picked up the wrong colour. Pick up a bit of glazing medium. Now, that's better, that's nice and dark now. Get the shape. And then we need to put a bit of dark there. Washing the brush. Orange, neat orange, neat orange. Just neat orange now. Looking for these areas where the orange is. Washing the brush. Back into that cadmium red glaze. Glaze out. Back over that yellow. And what I've done is I've just picked up a little bit of that alizarin crimson glaze, and I've gone down the side like that, and I've just pulled it through just to give that hint of, and when you get the highlight, the light hits that and it bounces, you've got like a reflective, little reflective highlight. So I just want to bring a little bit of that red onto the bottom of our table, so it just balances it out a little touch. And let's go into this VANDYKE brown. Let's bring a bit of yellow, white to that, bit of yellow. And let's do this stalk. Let's get this stalk in place now. Make it a bit stronger. Do a touch of white. There we go. Again, yellow, get some glazing medium. Pure yellow now. Bring in a bit of white to that, and very gently said, very tiny dots. Bit of white. I'm going to let that dry. And I'm going to once more put a glazing medium, cadmium orange red, bringing in a bit of that alizarin crimson. Just want to darken, a bit more matte medium, with black. Just added a bit of glazing medium now, the matte medium to the burnt umber, a little bit of white. Just want to lighten this section here. You're going to get a cloth. I want a bit of more burnt umber. Burnt umber. Just added a little bit of burnt umber now. I just want to try and get this table looking like a table. And finally, I think we can just about call this done. Some glazing medium, some alizarin crimson. I want to darken this edge up once more. Touch of black. To the alizarin crimson. Just want to touch this edge up. establish this shadow underneath. Get a bit of alizarin crimson then on black and just sign it in the bottom left hand corner. So there we are, apple, yes, there we are, a little bit of glazing technique, a little bit of how to draw it, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and that's what all art is all about, is experimenting. I encourage you to experiment with that. Get your tones right, get your values right. That's what these grayscale sticks are by the side of my easel here for, because you know roughly where that tone is. That tone there is around about there, that tone there is around about there, and that's why we use these type of scale sticks. And it's important that you practice with contrast, practice glazing. It's a wonderful thing, because what's going to happen then as you progress, glazing is I paint a lot with glazes. I used to paint a lot with glazes. I absolutely love that way of painting. But the other thing is we can actually play with colours as well. So you can paint that apple as is. Instead of using the burnt umber, you could just use the colours. And as long as you know the values, the changes, the depth, you get that depth of feeling with an apple like that. There we go. One apple on the board, one apple on the canvas. I'm going to have my lunch. So without further ado, all I got to say is thank you very much for joining me in the studio today. My name is Clive from clivesart.co.uk. Have a good day, a good week, a good month, a good year, because I don't know exactly when you're going to be watching this, because time is relative on YouTube.